Meanwhile, the downfall of the dollar remains work in progress.
4 decades high, lower income households face the worst of the crisis.
The US dollar is facing a backlash.
In May, inflation hit 8.6%, the highest in 40 years.
Venezuela are now worth next to nothing due to the sky-high levels of inflation.
Venezuela, of course, a country where prices double every few weeks.
According to Ray Dalio's Changing World Order, there is one dominant currency nearly every century. As an example, the French dominated world trade during 17th century and then came to Great Britain during 1800s. Since 1921, we have the United States of America that has braced this throne. The superpower that the US has had for more than 100 years is now under threat, and its global financial dominance is looming. Is history about to repeat itself? During the World War, the Western allies, especially Great Britain and France, placed significantly large war orders with the United States, and they paid for these large purchases by floating huge bonds to American buyers. These bonds were denominated not in pounds or francs, but in United States dollars. At the end of the war, America was flush with cash and also went on to execute a historic agreement with over 44 countries that set the stage for US dollar to become the superpower it is today. The Bretton Woods Agreement was signed on June of 1944 by 44 countries. In short, the agreement declared that for every 35 US dollars, the government of United States of America would provide 1 ounce of gold, and that rest of the currencies would be pegged against the US dollar. This agreement meant that the US dollar was going to be the new global standard and thus brought it into dominance. This is how it became the reserve currency of the world. With the newly acquired superpower, the economy of America started to flourish like never before. And by now, dollar had so deeply rooted itself into the world trade that it was hard to imagine a world without US dollar. Fast forward to a couple of decades, at the height of its global dominance, it was in so much demand that there just wasn't enough gold to back it up with. This is where the next political masterstroke came in. President Nixon in 1971 announced that the US dollar from that point onwards would not be backed by gold. The anchor tied to the US dollar was now broken, and the dollar was about to flex its wings. You might think why the other countries would not go back to their own currencies for trading. Credit to the political genius of American politicians, the US dollar had penetrated so deep into world economy that the other currencies could not go back to their own currencies even if they wanted to. One prime reason was the secret wartime agreement that the US executed back in 1945 with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and this agreement changed the course of US history. President Franklin Roosevelt offered protection to Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in exchange of these two things. 1. Exclusive rights to develop oil in Saudi Arabia, and 2. US dollar would be the receiving currency for every drop of oil that Saudi Arabia sold to the other currencies. This is also known as the petrodollar. With oil being the commodity of 21st century, US's masterstroke had clawed its way into the world economy. With the Federal Reserve in complete control of currency management of the US dollar and no gold to back it against, it gave it supreme authority to control world economy. It even meant that the Fed had power to print and pump money into its domestic economy without worrying about the global economy, which is exactly what happened during the COVID pandemic and the recent banking crisis in March 23. In both of these events, there was money pumped into the economy, translating into a rise in inflation, which stands at about 6% in US as of February 23. In any other country, this kind of money injected to the system would burn its economy to ashes. Look at Argentina and Venezuela, with the self-inflicted hyperinflation as an example. But why did hyperinflation not impact US, you might ask? Because it is the world reserve currency and they sit on that throne. Inflation in US means price rise everywhere else. The intricate economic framework is so closely knit that any tampering of the system as such is bound to have rippling effects. These ripples seem to have started hurting some of the emerging powers of global economy. The US dollar is currently valued at its highest since the last 20 years. So where is the downfall? Well, here are some of the reasons I think are possible reasons. Firstly, since the 2008 crisis, the amount of US dollar held as a reserve currency across the globe has been on a decline. Secondly, demand for oil is projected to decrease, and with the emergence of other competitive sellers in the market like Russia, Iran, and some of the Middle East countries, oil supremacy will not define economic strength in future. Thirdly, with the power of sanctions, US has been able to demonstrate how it could arm twist any of the country by virtue of sanctions. Classic example where Russia's foreign reserves were blocked in an effort to cripple its domestic economy. Lastly, the rising prices across the globe due to ripple effects of American domestic policies. As a result of all of these and many more, there are emerging powers in the world economy that are working their way to trade between themselves in their own currencies. Recently, China and Brazil have struck a deal to trade in their own currencies without either of the party buying the US dollar for their trade. It's also worth noting that China started moving away from the US dollar since 2010. Even India has been trading with Russia in rubles for over a year now. Recently, Saudi Arabia has also shown willingness to trade with China in Chinese yuan. Another milestone event in global finance is a move by BRICS to establish their own reserve currency. BRICS, a body established by 5 emerging superpowers of world economy, primarily put together to improve trade and commerce between themselves. They are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They collectively contribute to 1/3 of global GDP and have nearly half of the global population between them. While all these are possibly pinching the US dollar, in my personal opinion, the strength of US dollar is strong and continues to be. There may be a decline simply going by the developments from recent past, but it could take several decades really before it can be dethroned. For now, this is where we are. I see you still haven't smashed the like button. Please go ahead and do so, and while you're at it, please also subscribe.